My husband shattered our marriage vows on a televised gala stage. Microphone in hand, spotlight blazing, while I stood backstage cradling our unborn child. He called me a placeholder, a girl with a forgettable face and an empty bank account. His mistress laughed from the front row like this was rehearsed entertainment. What he didn't notice, the black car service idling outside wasn't some rideshare I scraped together. It was a diplomatic convoy. He thought he was finally free of dead weight. He had no clue he'd just publicly humiliated the woman who owns the deed to his laboratory, his legacy, his patents, and every dollar he thought he'd earned himself. If you're the kind of person who thinks powerful people always get away with cruelty, you won't like what's coming. But if you believe consequences still exist for men like him, stay exactly where you are. Comment below, what city are you watching for right now? The rain in Jersey City doesn't just fall, it attacks. I was standing on the curb outside our luxury high-rise, 7 months pregnant, watching my husband Cyrus throw my father's leather duffel bag into a gutter filled with oily water. The bag hit the pavement with a wet slap. 3 years of memories soaked through in seconds. I'm done pretending, Kaylin, Cyrus said, his voice loud enough for the doorman to hear. Loud enough for the couple walking their dog across the street to turn and stare. This apartment, this life, it's for people who matter, not for charity cases from the Midwest. Sloan stepped out from behind him. His mistress, his chief of brand. She was wearing the coat I'd admired last month, but told Cyrus we couldn't afford. Turns out he could afford it. Just not for me. Don't be so hard on her, Cyrus, Sloan said, her voice dripping with fake concern. Maybe she can find a shelter that takes soon-to-be moms with no references. I looked at the bag in the gutter. My father had given me that bag when I turned 18. It was an heirloom, hand-stitched Italian leather from a company his grandfather had invested in back in the 1960s. Cyrus thought it was a knockoff I'd bought at a thrift store. He thought a lot of things. I pulled out my phone. Not the cracked screen model Cyrus had bought me 2 Christmases ago. The one I'd been carrying in my coat pocket for the last 8 months. Custom encrypted. Untraceable. Worth more than the car Cyrus was leasing. I pressed one button. The test was over. The building staff pretended not to watch, but I could feel their eyes. The night doorman. The valet who always opened the door for Cyrus, but never for me. The security guard who'd been told by Beatrice, Cyrus's mother, that I wasn't allowed to use the resident gym because I didn't fit the building's aesthetic. They were all watching now. Cyrus crossed his arms, standing under the dry safety of the building's overhang while I stood in the rain. You can leave the keys on the counter inside, he said. Sloan's moving in this weekend. We're going to need the space. Sloan smiled. She actually smiled. For 36 months, I had played this role perfectly. I wore clothes from discount bins. I clipped coupons. I rode the bus to my job at a small bookstore in Newark, even though Cyrus made 6 figures at his pharmaceutical startup. I let his mother mock my recipes, my haircuts, my lack of a pedigree. I needed to know if the man I married could love someone without a trust fund, without connections, without anything except herself. The answer was standing in front of me, laughing with another woman while I dripped rainwater onto the sidewalk. A black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. The back door opened. Beatrice stepped out, her silver hair perfect despite the storm, her Burberry trench coat probably worth more than most people's rent. She looked at me the way you'd look at a stain on expensive fabric. Still here, Beatrice walked toward me, her heels clicking on the wet pavement. She stopped 3 feet away and pulled an envelope from her purse. I was hoping we could handle this like adults, Kaylin. No lawyers. No drama. She held out the envelope. I didn't take it. There's $5,000 in there, Beatrice continued. Enough for you to disappear. Go back to whatever farm town you crawled out of. Change the baby's last name. We'll pretend this whole mistake never happened. Cyrus shifted his weight. For just a second, I thought I saw something flicker across his face. Doubt maybe, or guilt. But then Sloan touched his arm, and whatever it was died. Take the money, Kalen, Cyrus said. It's more than fair. I looked at the envelope, at Beatrice's manicured fingers, at the check inside that was probably signed with the same pen she used to write donation checks to her country club charity galas. Then I took it. Beatrice smiled. Victory. I tore the check in half, then in half again. The pieces fluttered to the wet ground like confetti. Beatrice's smile vanished. You stupid, ungrateful. I'm done, I said quietly. I raised my phone to my ear. The line connected on the first ring. Dad, my voice was calm, steady, cold. I'm done. Send the auditors. All of them. Beatrice's face went white. Actually white. Like someone had drained the blood straight from her cheeks. Kalen, she whispered. What? What did you just? 36 months, I said, looking directly at Cyrus. I gave you 36 months to choose me over money, over status, over your mother's approval. You failed every single test. Cyrus's expression shifted from confusion to something that looked almost like fear. What are you talking about? Who are you calling? I smiled. For the first time in 3 years, I smiled at my husband the way I used to smile at people who underestimated my father. You're about to find out. Only 5% of people watching this will actually see how it ends. If you're not subscribed, you're basically admitting you can't handle the truth of what happens when a Wellington strikes back. 3 minutes. That's how long it took for my father's security team to arrive. Not 30 minutes. Not an hour. 3. Cyrus was still standing under the overhang, trying to make sense of what I'd said, when the first black SUV turned onto our street. Then the second. Then the third. They didn't have sirens. Didn't need them. The way they moved, smooth, coordinated, professional, made every other car on the road pull over like they were royalty. Kalen, Cyrus said slowly. What is this? I didn't answer. The SUVs stopped in front of the building. Men in dark suits stepped out. Not police. Not security guards. Private contractors. The kind of people who protect diplomats and CEOs and people who needed to disappear problems quietly. One of them approached me with an umbrella, shielding me from the rain I'd been standing in for the last 10 minutes. He didn't say a word, just stood there, a wall between me and Cyrus. Sloane's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, then her face went pale. Cyrus, she said, her voice shaking. My bank account. It's frozen. What? Cyrus pulled out his own phone, swiping frantically. He tried his key card on the building's entrance. The light turned red. Denied. He tried again. Red. What the hell? He spun toward the doorman. Marcus, there's something wrong with my card. Marcus looked to the ground. I'm sorry, Mr. Thorne. I've been instructed not to grant you access to the building. Instructed by who? Cyrus's voice cracked. I live here. Not anymore. The voice came from behind me. Deep. Calm. Unmistakable. I turned and saw my father stepping out of the lead SUV. Harlan Wellington didn't look like a billionaire. He looked like a man who owned billionaires. Charcoal suit. Silver hair. The kind of presence that made rooms go quiet without him saying a word. He walked past Cyrus without a glance and stopped in front of me. His hand rested gently on my shoulder. You stayed too long, he said softly. I had to be sure, I replied. Harlan nodded. Then he turned to Cyrus. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. Mr. Thorne, my father's voice was surgical, precise. Do you know who I am? Cyrus stared. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Harlan, Wellington. The name came out like a question. Correct. My father gestured toward me. And do you know who she is? Cyrus looked at me, really looked at me. For the first time in months, maybe years, he actually saw me. Kaylin Wellington, my father continued. My daughter, the sole heir to Wellington Enterprises. The woman who has been subsidizing your entire life for the last 3 years while you treated her like garbage. Sloan made a small sound, like a whimper. Beatrice, who'd been frozen in place since the SUVs arrived, finally found her voice. This is impossible. Kaylin was a scholarship student. She works at a bookstore. She was testing you. Harlan interrupted. All of you. And you failed spectacularly. A man in a suit approached Cyrus, holding a folder. He handed it to him without a word. Cyrus opened it. His hand started shaking. The folder slipped from his fingers, papers scattering across the wet pavement. What? His voice was barely a whisper. What is this? Your termination, my father said simply. The building you're standing in front of? Owned by a Wellington subsidiary. Your pharmaceutical startup? Funded by Wellington Capital. Your research lab, your patents, your office space, all of it belongs to my daughter. Or rather, it did. As of 17 minutes ago, you've been removed from every board, every account, every property associated with your name. Cyrus dropped to his knees. Literally dropped. Papers floated around him in the rain. Harlan, my father said to me, his voice softer now, do you want this handled gently or thoroughly? I looked at Cyrus, at the man who'd kicked me out of my own home while I carried his child, at Sloan, who'd laughed while filming my humiliation, at Beatrice, who'd offered me money to disappear. Thoroughly, I said. My father smiled, not a warm smile. A satisfied one. Another courier appeared, walking straight past Cyrus to hand Beatrice a separate folder. She opened it. Her legs gave out. She collapsed onto the curb, staring at the papers like they were a death sentence. Your country club membership, my father explained. Revoked. Your board position at St. Mary's Hospital? My wife sits on that board. You're done. Your line of credit, your investment accounts, your reputation, all of it is currently being audited by people who don't appreciate fraud. Fraud. Beatrice's voice was a rasp. I haven't committed fraud. You accepted donations under false pretenses, my father said. Claimed connections to my family that didn't exist. Used my daughter's name without permission to secure loans. That's fraud, Mrs. Thorne. Cyrus was still on his knees, staring at nothing. Sloan tried to walk away. One of the security guards stepped in front of her. Miss Sloan, my father said, you're not going anywhere. Corporate espionage carries a prison sentence. Her face went gray. I watched all of this happen. Watched 3 people who'd made my life hell for 36 months lose everything in under 10 minutes. And I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No anger. Just exhaustion. We're leaving, I said to my father. He nodded, guiding me toward the SUV. The security team formed a wall between us and the Thorns. As I climbed into the car, I heard Cyrus call my name. Kaylin, wait, please. I didn't turn around. The door closed. The convoy pulled away, and I never looked back. The ride to my father's estate took 40 minutes. I spent most of it staring out the window, watching Jersey City turn into countryside, rain streaking across the glass like tears I refused to cry. My father sat across from me, silent. He knew better than to ask if I was okay. I wasn't, but I would be. We pulled through the gates of the Wellington compound, just after midnight. The house, mansion, really, was lit up like a monument. My mother was waiting at the door. She didn't say anything, just pulled me into her arms and held me while I finally let myself break down. Later, in the study, my father poured himself a scotch and pulled up a laptop. "There's something you need to see," he said. I sat down next to him. The screen showed security footage, multiple angles, timestamps from earlier tonight. "Your building had cameras," I said. "Every building has cameras," my father replied. "But this one is particularly interesting." He pressed play. The footage showed Beatrice arriving at the high-rise, showed her stepping out of her Mercedes, showed her walking toward me, and it showed her shoving me. I stumbled backward in the video, my hand flying to my stomach. I'd forgotten about that part. The adrenaline had wiped it from my memory. But there it was, clear as day. Beatrice Thorne physically assaulting a pregnant woman. "That's assault," my father said quietly. "On camera, with witnesses." He switched to another angle. This one showed Cyrus and Sloan inside the apartment earlier that evening. They were talking, laughing. Cyrus was showing her something on his laptop. My father froze the frame and zoomed in. It was a patent application for a pharmaceutical compound Cyrus claimed he'd developed himself. "Recognize this?" my father asked. I nodded. "That's the compound from the Wellington Research Grant. The one you gave him 3 years ago." "Correct. He was supposed to collaborate with our labs. Instead, he filed it under his own name. Sole inventor. 0 credit to Wellington funding." "That's theft," I said. "That's exactly what it is." My father closed the laptop. Sloan wasn't just his mistress, Kaylin. She was feeding him information, trade secrets, research data. She was a corporate spy. I felt sick. She was working for someone else. She was working for a competitor. They wanted access to Wellington Tech. Cyrus was the entry point. You were the target. The room spun. 3 years. 3 years of humiliation, of being treated like I was worthless. And it was all a setup. Not just a marriage. A heist. "Does he know?" I asked. "Not yet. But he's about to." My father opened his phone and pulled up a live stream. Cyrus's live stream. The one he'd started earlier tonight to announce his new chapter with Sloan. It was still running. The camera was pointed at the lobby of the high-rise. You could see Cyrus in the frame, on his knees, papers scattered around him. You could see Beatrice on the curb, sobbing into her hands. You could see Sloan being escorted into an SUV by 2 federal agents. And you could see the comments section absolutely losing their minds. Thousands of comments. Tens of thousands. "Is this real? Did he just get arrested? Who is Kaylin Wellington? This is the greatest downfall I've ever seen live." My father switched to another tab. News articles. Already posted. Tech CEO Cyrus Thorne under investigation for patent fraud. Wellington heiress exposes husband's scheme. Corporate espionage ring busted in Jersey City. "The world is watching," my father said, "and they're not on his side." I stared at the screen, at the man I'd married, the man who'd promised to love me in sickness and in health. For richer or poorer, he meant none of it. "There's one more thing," my father said. He pulled up another video. This one was from 8 months ago. It showed Cyrus and Sloan in a hotel room, talking, kissing, planning. "I knew about her," I whispered. "I know you did," my father said gently. "You told me. You said you wanted to see if he'd choose the baby over her." I nodded. On the screen, Cyrus was laughing, telling Sloan that I'd never find out, that I was too stupid, too trusting. I closed the laptop. "I wanted to see all of it," I said. "Every video, every piece of evidence. I wanted to know exactly how long I knew, how much I saw, How completely he underestimated me. My father smiled. Not kindly, proudly. Consider it done. By morning, every piece of footage had been released to Cyrus's legal team. By noon, Beatrice had been formally charged with assault. By evening, Sloan had been extradited to face federal charges. And Cyrus? Cyrus was sitting in a conference room with 12 lawyers, watching his entire life collapse on a projection screen. The live stream was still running, and the whole world was watching. If you're watching this without being a subscriber, you're essentially a bystander to injustice. Hit that button so you're on the right side of the story before the next twist drops. 72 hours. That's how long it took to erase Cyrus Thorne from every system, every registry, every database that mattered. My father didn't do it out of revenge. He did it because it was efficient. Harlan Wellington didn't waste time on people who'd proven themselves unworthy. He simply removed them, like pulling weeds. The first thing to go was Cyrus's company, Thorne Pharmaceuticals. The board meeting happened in the back of my father's SUV while I sat in a separate car, watching through tinted windows. 12 board members. 11 of them voted to remove Cyrus as CEO. The 12th abstained. That board member was fired 16 minutes later. Cyrus's replacement was announced before lunch. A woman with 20 years of experience and zero tolerance for fraud. She immediately launched an internal audit. By day 2, Cyrus's assets were frozen. His cars repossessed. His office cleared out. His access to the building revoked permanently. Beatrice fared worse. Her country club membership was revoked within 20 minutes of my father making a single phone call. The board didn't ask questions. They didn't need to. When Harlan Wellington suggests someone doesn't belong, people listen. Her position on the hospital charity board? Gone. My mother made one appearance at the next meeting, mentioned Beatrice's legal troubles, and the vote was unanimous. Her investment accounts were flagged for audit. Her line of credit suspended. Her reputation in every social circle she'd ever belonged to destroyed. She'd built her entire identity on being untouchable. Turns out she was made of paper. Sloan's story was simpler. Federal agents don't move slowly when corporate espionage involves international competitors. She was in custody within 48 hours, her assets seized, her future reduced to plea bargains and prison sentences. I didn't feel bad for any of them. I felt tired. On the third day, I returned to the apartment one last time. Not the apartment Cyrus had kicked me out of. The real one. The penthouse 3 floors above his unit that I'd been renting under a shell company for the last 6 months. Cyrus never knew it existed. I opened the floor safe hidden under the bedroom closet and pulled out everything I'd kept from him. My real documents. My real phone. Jewelry my grandmother had left me. Photographs from before I met him, when I still knew who I was. I packed it all into a new bag. Not the one Cyrus had thrown in the gutter. That one was evidence now. This one was simple. Black canvas. Functional. As I zipped it closed, someone knocked on the door. I opened it. Cyrus stood there, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 3 days. "How did you get up here?" I asked. "I bribed the new doorman," he said. His voice was raw, broken. "Kaylin, please. We need to talk." "No," I said. "We don't. I made a mistake." He stepped forward. I stepped back. I was stupid. I was arrogant. "But Kaylin, we have a child together. You can't just erase me." "I'm not erasing you," I said calmly. "You did that yourself. Please." His voice cracked. "I'm begging you. Give me another chance. For the baby's sake." I looked at him. Really looked at him. This man I loved. This man I'd built a life with. This man who'd throw me away the second he thought I had no value. The baby will have a father, I said quietly. It just won't be a thorn. His face crumpled. What does that mean? It means you'll have visitation rights. Supervised. Twice a month. You'll pay child support, and you'll stay away from me. That's the deal. Kaylin, those are the terms, I interrupted. Take them or leave them. Either way, I'm done. I picked up my bag and walked past him. He didn't try to stop me. As I reached the elevator, I heard him call out one last time. I loved you. I pressed the button. The doors opened. No, I said, stepping inside. You love what you thought I was. You never knew me at all. The doors closed. I never saw Cyrus Thorne again. 6 months later, I was living in a city where nobody knew my name. Portland, Oregon, rain capital of the country. Population, 500,000 people who minded their own business. I rented a one-bedroom apartment in the Pearl District for $1,200 a month. It had hardwood floors that creaked, a kitchen the size of a closet, and a window that looked out onto a coffee shop where people actually talked to each other instead of staring at their phones. It was perfect. I'd taken my mother's maiden name, Martinez, Kayla Martinez. It felt like putting on clothes that actually fit after years of wearing someone else's uniform. The bookstore where I worked was called Chapter and Verse. Independent, locally owned, the kind of place that smelled like old paper and fresh coffee. My boss, Rita, was 63 and didn't care where I came from. She cared that I showed up on time and knew the difference between fiction and literary fiction. I worked mornings, shelved books, helped customers find recommendations, made $10 an hour plus tips from the cafe, and I was happier than I'd ever been in the penthouse. My daughter was born on a Tuesday in March. 7 pounds 4 ounces. Dark hair like mine. Eyes that hadn't decided on a color yet, but seemed to change with the light. I named her Rhea, after my grandmother, the one who taught me that money was a tool, not a personality. Rhea didn't care that I was a Wellington. She cared that I fed her on time, changed her when she cried, and sang off-key lullabies at 2 in the morning when she couldn't sleep. Being a mother was the first thing I'd done in years that felt completely, utterly real. 3 months after Rhea was born, I was at Peninsula Park with her in a stroller, watching ducks fight over breadcrumbs some kid had thrown into the pond. That's when I saw him, a man in his early 30s, struggling with a stroller that had a wheel stuck. A toddler, maybe 2 years old, was strapped inside, screaming like the world was ending. Come on, the man muttered, yanking at the wheel. Not today. Please not today. The wheel came off. The man sat down on the grass, looking like he wanted to cry right along with his kid. I walked over. Need a hand. He looked up, exhausted, the kind of tired that comes from weeks of not sleeping, not from one bad night. Unless you're a miracle worker, he said, I don't think there's much you can do. This stroller was barely holding together when I bought it. I think it just officially gave up. I knelt down and looked at the wheel. It wasn't broken, just disconnected. I popped it back into place and twisted the locking mechanism until it clicked. Try it now, I said. He stood up, tested the wheel. It rolled smooth. How did you? He stopped. Laughed. The kind of laugh that's half relief, half disbelief. Thank you. Seriously. You just saved me from having to carry a 2-year-old and a broken stroller 6 blocks home. No problem, I said. He extended his hand. Grant. Kaylin. His handshake was firm. Calloused. The hands of someone who actually worked with them. You've got good instincts, Grant said, nodding toward Rhea and my stroller. How old? 3 months. Sleep yet? Not in any meaningful way. He grinned. It gets better, or so people keep telling me. I'm still waiting for evidence. We stood there for a moment. 2 strangers in a park, both running on no sleep and too much coffee. Then Grant's son threw his sippy cup on the ground and started screaming again. "That's my cue," Grant said, sighing. He picked up the cup, wiped it on his jeans, and handed it back to his son. "Nice meeting you, Kalen." "You too." He started to walk away, then stopped, turned back. "You look like someone who's survived a war," he said quietly. "Want a coffee?" I should have said no. Should have kept my distance. Should have remembered that letting people in was how I'd ended up married to Cyrus in the first place. But there was something in Grant's eyes, something honest, something that didn't want anything from me except maybe 30 minutes of adult conversation. "Yeah," I said, "I'd like that." We walked to a coffee shop 2 blocks away. Spent an hour talking about nothing important. Sleep schedules, toddler tantrums, the best parks in Portland. Grant didn't ask about my past. Didn't ask about Ria's father. Didn't ask why I looked like I'd been running from something. He just asked if I want a refill. When we left, he offered to walk me home. I declined. He didn't push. "Maybe I'll see you around," Grant said. "Maybe," I replied. I watched him walk away, his son babbling in the stroller, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. I didn't see the man across the street, the one in the dark jacket with the camera, the one who'd been following me since I left the bookstore. But he saw me, and 20 minutes later, a text message arrived on my father's phone. Target located, Portland, Oregon, requesting further instructions. The clinic smelled like antiseptic and fear. I sat in the waiting room with Ria on my lap, watching her grab at the toys attached to her carrier. She was due for her 4-month checkup. Shots, weight check, all the things that came with making sure a tiny human stayed healthy. The TV in the corner was on. Local news, traffic, weather, a segment about a food cart festival downtown. Then the doors opened, and I heard a voice I recognized. "Please," Grant was saying to the receptionist. "I know I don't have active insurance yet. It doesn't kick in until next month. But my son has had a fever for 2 days, and I've tried everything. I just need someone to look at him." The receptionist looked sympathetic but stuck. "I'm sorry, sir. Without insurance or payment up front, we can't." "How much?" Grant interrupted. "How much is the visit?" $250 for the exam. More if we need to run tests." Grant's face went pale. He pulled out his wallet. I saw him count bills. Twice. He came up short. "I have $170, he said quietly. "I get paid Friday. I can bring the rest then." "I'm sorry," the receptionist said again. "Policy is." "I understand policy," Grant said. His voice was strained, desperate. "But my son is sick. He's 2 years old. I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for help." Leo, Grant's son, was in his arms, face flushed, eyes glassy. The kid was clearly miserable. I stood up. "Excuse me," I said, walking to the desk. "I'll cover it." Both Grant and the receptionist turned to stare at me. "You don't have to," Grant started. "I know," I said, "but I'm going to." I pulled out my debit card, the one connected to a small account I'd set up specifically for moments like this. Enough money to help without raising flags. Enough to stay anonymous. I handed it to the receptionist. "Whatever he needs. Tests, medication, everything." The receptionist processed the payment. Grant looked at me like I'd just performed surgery on his kid myself. "I'll pay you back," he said immediately. "I promise. Just give me your number and I'll—" "Don't worry about it," I said. "No, seriously. I can't just—" "You can." I looked at Leo, who was resting his head on Grant's shoulder. "Take care of your son. That's all that matters." Grant's eyes filled with tears. He blinked them back fast, but I saw them. "Thank you," he whispered. The nurse called Leo's name. Grant carried him back, glancing at me one more time before disappearing down the hallway. I sat back down with Ria. My heart was racing, not from the money, from the look on Grant's face. Cyrus would have seen that moment as weakness, would have used it, would have calculated exactly how much he could extract from someone willing to pay a stranger's medical bills. Grant just looked grateful. 20 minutes later, the nurse called Ria's name. I gathered her things and headed back. The exam went fine. Ria was healthy, growing on schedule. The doctor said she was perfect. When I came back out to the waiting room, Grant was there, waiting. Leo was asleep in his arms, a prescription paper folded in Grant's jacket pocket. Ear infection, Grant said. Antibiotics should clear it up in a few days. He paused. Because of you. I'm glad he's okay, I said. I meant what I said, Grant continued. I'm paying you back. I don't care how long it takes. You don't have to. I do. He shifted Leo's weight. Look, I don't know what your story is. I don't know why someone who works at a bookstore has that kind of money just sitting around to help strangers. But I know I owe you. So let me work it off. I'm pretty good with my hands. I can fix things, build things, whatever you need. I should have said no. Should have told him to forget about it and moved on. But I didn't. I've got some boxes at my apartment, I said. Books I've been meaning to shelve. If you're serious about working it off, you could help me with that. Grant nodded. When? Saturday? Saturday works. He gave me his number. I gave him my address. As I walked out of the clinic with Ria, I glanced at the TV in the corner. The news had changed. Now it was showing a national story. Pharmaceutical CEO Cyrus Thorne reported missing after fleeing fraud investigation. Authorities asking for public assistance in locating. I stopped walking. Ria made a small sound. I looked down at her. She was staring up at me with those wide, uncertain eyes. It's okay, I whispered. He's gone. He can't hurt us. But as I pushed the stroller out into the parking lot, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was wrong. Most people leave right when the story gets deep. If you're still here, you're the 1% who actually values a good ending. Subscribe now, so you don't lose this channel forever. Saturday came faster than I expected. Grant showed up at my apartment at 10 in the morning, Leo strapped to his chest in a carrier, a tool bag slung over one shoulder. Reporting for duty, he said with a grin. I let him in, showed him the disaster that was my living room. Boxes of books stacked everywhere. A bookshelf I'd bought from IKEA that I'd been too intimidated to assemble. Grant looked at the mess, looked at me, laughed. You weren't kidding. I don't joke about books, I said. We spent the morning building the shelf. Grant did most of the work while I held pieces in place and entertained Leo with blocks. Somewhere around hour 2, Leo got bored with blocks and started demanding attention. Grant scooped him up, held him in the air, and made a sound that can only be described as a dinosaur having an existential crisis. Leo laughed so hard he hiccuped. Ria, who'd been sleeping in her bassinet, woke up and stared at Grant like he was the most fascinating thing she'd ever seen. You're a natural, I said. Survival skill, Grant replied, setting Leo down. You learn fast when you're doing it alone. How long? I asked, then immediately regretted it. Sorry, that's too personal. It's okay. Grant sat down on the floor, cross-legged, Leo climbing into his lap. My wife passed 2 years ago. Cancer. We knew it was coming, but that doesn't make it easier. I'm sorry, I said quietly. Me too. He looked at Leo. But I've got him, and he's worth every sleepless night. We worked in comfortable silence after that. By early afternoon, the shelf was done, the books were organized, and my apartment actually looked like a place where a functional adult lived. Grant refused lunch, said he'd already taken up enough of my time, but he didn't leave. Instead, he sat on my couch, Leo asleep on his chest, and we talked. About Portland, about teaching, Grant taught history at a public high school. About his late wife, who'd been a nurse and had loved terrible reality TV. I got offered a corporate job last year, Grant said. Curriculum development for a private education company. 3 times my current salary. But it would have meant travel. Late nights. Missing Leo's bedtime. You turn it down, I said. Yeah. He looked at his son. Time's the only thing I can't buy back. Leo won't be 2 forever. I'd rather be poor and present than rich and absent. Something in my chest cracked. Cyrus had chosen money every single time. Chosen status. Chosen advancement. Chosen everything except me. Grant had chosen his son. That's beautiful, I said. Grant shrugged. It's just being a dad. As the afternoon stretched into evening, Grant finally stood to leave. Leo was awake now, babbling about something only toddlers understand. Thank you for today, I said. I should be thanking you, Grant replied. This was the most normal I've felt in months. He walked to the door, paused. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you help me? At the clinic. You didn't know me. Didn't know me anything. I thought about telling him the truth. About Cyrus. About the test. About everything. But I wasn't ready. Because you needed help, I said simply. And I could give it. Grant nodded. Like that made perfect sense. Well, he said, if you ever need help back, you know where to find me. As he walked down the hallway toward the stairs, I felt my phone buzz. A text from my father. He found you. Be ready. My blood went cold. I looked out the window. Grant was buckling Leo into his car seat. A beat-up Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door. And at the end of the street, idling under a broken streetlight, was a black sedan. New Jersey plates. I grabbed Rhea from her bassinet and locked every door in the apartment. It happened 3 days later. I was closing up the bookstore. Rita had left early for a doctor's appointment, leaving me to handle the last hour alone. The rain was coming down in sheets. Classic Portland. The kind of rain that makes you question why anyone lives in the Pacific Northwest. I locked the front door, flipped the sign to closed, and grabbed my umbrella. That's when I saw him. Cyrus. He was standing across the street under an awning, looking like a stranger wearing my ex-husband's face. His hair was too long. His clothes didn't fit right. He'd lost weight. Too much weight. But his eyes were the same. Cold. Calculating. Desperate. I turned and walked the other direction. Fast. Kalen. His voice cut through the rain. I just want to talk. I kept walking. He followed. Please. He was jogging now, splashing through puddles. Just 5 minutes. I stopped. Turned. Faced him. What do you want, Cyrus? He stopped 10 feet away, breathing hard, looking at me like I was a life raft and he was drowning. I need your help, he said. No. Kalen, please. I said no. I started walking again. He grabbed my arm. I yanked it back, stepping out of reach. Touch me again, and I'm calling the police. I'm not here to hurt you, Cyrus said quickly. I'm here because you're the only person who can stop this. Stop what? Your father. His voice cracked. He's destroying me. My company, my reputation, my life. I've got nothing left. I'm living in a motel in Tacoma. I can't get a job. Can't get a loan. Can't even rent an apartment because my credit's been flagged. You did this to yourself, I said. I made mistakes, Cyrus shouted. I know that, but I don't deserve this. I don't deserve to lose everything. You threw me in the rain while I was pregnant, I said quietly. You humiliated me in front of strangers. You chose your mistress over your child. What exactly did you think was going to happen? Cyrus's face twisted. This isn't about revenge. This is about money. Your father wants me gone so he could take over my research. But I've got lawyers now. I'm filing a lawsuit. And if you don't call him off, I'm going public. I'm going to every news outlet in the country and telling them that the Wellingtons are criminals. I laughed. Actually laughed. You think the media will side with you? The man caught on camera committing fraud? The man whose mistress was a corporate spy? I'll tell them about Rhea, Cyrus said, and his voice dropped. Got quiet. Dangerous. I'll fight for custody. I'll drag you through court for years. I'll make sure you never have a peaceful day again. Fear spiked through me. Cold and sharp. You wouldn't. Try me. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Grant. He was holding an umbrella, his face set in an expression I'd never seen before. Calm, but not kind. Protective. Is there a problem here? Grant asked. Cyrus looked at him, sized him up, dismissed him. This is a private conversation, Cyrus said. Doesn't look private, Grant replied. He stepped between us. Looks like you're harassing her. And who the hell are you? Cyrus sneered. Someone who's not leaving until you do. Cyrus laughed. The ugly kind. Let me guess. The new boyfriend? You've got no idea what you're getting into, friend. This woman comes with baggage you can't even comprehend. I don't care about baggage, Grant said evenly. Really? Cyrus pulled out his phone, pulling up something on the screen. You know who she is? Kaylin Wellington, billionaire heiress. The woman playing poor in your little bookstore? She's worth more than you'll make in 10 lifetimes. He showed Grant the screen. An article with my photo. Grant looked at it, looked at me, looked back at Cyrus. I don't care who she is, Grant said again. If you touch her, we're going to have a very different conversation. Cyrus's sneer deepened. Ask her about the Wellingtons. Teach her. Ask her who she really is. Ask her if she's been lying to you the whole time. Grant didn't move. Cyrus shook his head, stepping back into the rain. This isn't over, Kaylin. Not by a long shot. He walked away, disappearing into the downpour. I stood there, shaking, not from cold, from adrenaline. Grant turned to me, his expression unreadable. Is it true? He asked quietly. I couldn't lie anymore. Yes. Grant nodded slowly, handed me his umbrella. We should talk, he said, but not here. If you're waiting for the perfect moment to subscribe, this is it. Don't be the person who watches the whole series, but never joins the community. Do it for the algorithm. We went to Grant's apartment. It was smaller than mine. 1 bedroom, toys everywhere, a couch that had seen better days. But it was clean, lived in, real. Leo was with a babysitter. Grant had texted her on the way over, asking if she could keep him for another hour. I sat on the couch, Rhea asleep in her carrier at my feet. Grant sat across from me in a folding chair, waiting. My name is Kaylin Wellington, I said. My father is Harlan Wellington. Yes, that Harlan Wellington. I'm worth somewhere around $4 billion, depending on the market. Grant didn't react. I married Cyrus 3 years ago, I continued. But I hid who I was. I wanted to see if he'd love me without the money, without the name. I lived like I was nobody for 36 months, and he treated me like I was nobody. So I left, and came here, Grant said, and came here. I looked at Rhea. I wanted a fresh start. I wanted to be just me, not a Wellington, not an heiress, just a person. Grant leaned back in his chair. So this whole time, the bookstore, the apartment, all of it was a lie. I finished. Not about who I am, but about what I have. Why didn't you tell me? Because I needed to know, I said. My voice cracked. I needed to know if someone could care about me without seeing the money first. Cyrus failed that test. I couldn't risk failing it again. Grant was quiet for a long time. Then he stood up, walked to a drawer, pulled out a small wooden box. He opened it. Inside was a ring, hand-carved from redwood. Simple, beautiful. I made this, Grant said. I was going to give it to you next month. I was going to ask you to marry me. My heart stopped. But now I don't know if anything between us was real, Grant continued. I don't know if you actually liked me, or if I was just another test. Another experiment to see if the poor guy would pass. That's not fair, I whispered. Isn't it? Grant's voice rose. You lied to me, Kaylin. For months. You let me think we were equals. Let me pay for coffee dates I could barely afford because I wanted to contribute. Let me feel like I had something to offer you. And the whole time, you could have bought the entire coffee shop without checking your bank account. Tears were streaming down my face now. I never lied about how I felt. How am I supposed to believe that? Grant asked, how am I supposed to trust anything when the foundation was built on deception? My phone rang. I ignored it. It rang again. I looked at the screen. My father. I have to take this, I said. Grant gestured. Go ahead. I answered. Dad. Kaylin. His voice was tight, controlled. Cyrus just filed a lawsuit against Wellington Enterprises. He's also filed for emergency custody of Rhea, and he's partnered with Marcus Hale. Marcus Hale, my father's biggest competitor, a billionaire who'd spent the last decade trying to dismantle Wellington Holdings piece by piece. He's going nuclear, I said. Yes, which means we need to respond in kind. I'm buying the school district where Grant works. We'll make sure he's protected. No, I said immediately. Kaylin. No, Dad. Grant doesn't want protection from you. He wants to earn his own way. If you buy that school, you'll prove him right. You'll prove that I was using him. Then what do you suggest? I looked at Grant, at the ring in the box, at the man who defended me in the rain without knowing who I was. I'll handle it, I said. My way. I hung up. Grant was staring at me. Your father was going to buy my school. He was trying to help. I don't want his help. Grant slammed the box shut. I don't want handouts. I don't want billionaire safety nets. I want to build a life on my own terms. And I can't do that if your family is pulling strings behind the scenes. He set the box on the table, walked to the door, opened it. I think you should go, he said quietly. I stood up, picked up Rhea's carrier. Grant, please, he interrupted. Just go. I walked past him, stopped in the doorway. I love you, I said. That part was never a lie. Grant didn't respond. I walked out into the hallway, heard the door close behind me, and broke down crying in the stairwell. The interview aired on a Thursday, national television, prime time. I sat in front of a camera crew in my father's study and told the truth. Not as Kaylin Wellington, victim, as Kaylin Wellington, whistleblower. I explained Cyrus's fraud, showed documents proving he'd stolen research, presented evidence of the corporate espionage ring he'd been part of. But I didn't stop there. I announced I was liquidating half my personal trust fund, $2 billion. It would go toward funding a national healthcare initiative, free clinics in underserved communities, insurance subsidies for families who couldn't afford coverage. I spent years hiding who I was, I said to the camera, because I was afraid people would only see the money. But money is just a tool. It doesn't define you. What defines you is what you choose to do with it. I looked directly into the lens. Cyrus Thorne stole research meant to help people and try to profit from it. I'm making sure that research gets used the way it was always intended, to save lives, not bank accounts. The interview went viral. Within 24 hours, Cyrus's lawsuit was dismissed. His custody claim thrown out. His partnership with Marcus Hale dissolved. And 3 days later, federal agents arrested him for fraud, theft, and conspiracy. I watched it happen on the news. Watched him get walked out of a motel in handcuffs. And I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not revenge. Just closure. That night, there was a knock on my apartment door. I opened it. Grant stood there. No Leo. No carrier. Just him. I watched the interview, he said. Okay. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I said. I did. Grant stepped inside, looked around my tiny apartment, at the life I'd built without Wellington money. I was angry, he said, and I'm still processing. But I realized something. You weren't testing me to see if I was good enough for you. You were testing to see if you were safe with me. And that's different. I nodded, unable to speak. I don't want your money, Grant continued. I don't want the Wellington name. I don't want your father buying me security. But I do want you. The woman who paid for my son's doctor visit. The woman who helped me build a bookshelf. The woman who cried in a stairwell because she thought she'd lost me. He pulled the wooden box from his pocket, opened it. I'm not asking you to give up your family, Grant said. I'm asking you to build one with me. As equals. No tests. No lies. Just us. He held out the ring. Will you marry me, Kaylin Wellington? I took the ring, slid it onto my finger. Yes, I whispered, but on one condition. What? We do it my way. Small wedding. Portland courthouse. No media. And afterward, I'm taking your name. I'm done being a Wellington. Grant smiled. You sure? Completely. 3 months later, we stood in front of a judge in downtown Portland. Leo was our ring bearer. Ria was held by Rita from the bookstore. I wore a simple white dress. Grant wore the same suit he wore to parent-teacher conferences. And when the judge asked if I took Grant Mitchell to be my husband, I said yes without hesitation. A week later, a package arrived at our new house. Not a mansion, a modest 3-bedroom in a neighborhood with good schools. Inside was a deed to the park where Grant and I had first met. My father had purchased it and donated it to the city with one condition. It would remain public land forever. A note was tucked inside. Some investments aren't about profit. They're about legacy. Love, Dad. I stood in the doorway, holding the deed, watching Grant teach Leo and Ria how to kick a soccer ball in the backyard. And I realized something. My fortune had never been the money. It had always been this. The person who chose me when I had nothing to offer except myself. The man who loved me not despite my past, but because I'd survived it. I walked outside, joined my family on the grass, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely, perfectly wealthy.
Hey there. Thank you so much for watching till the very end. We really appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And guess what? The story doesn't end here. Click on the video right here on your screen to dive into another fascinating story. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Once again, thanks for being a part of this amazing community. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring stories that move you.